Crafty friends, it's Jess from jesscrafts.com, and today I am here to share a card featuring Gerda Steiner Designs clear stamps. This is the Go For It stamp set, which is one of her smaller clear stamp sets, and it's available in the GSD stamps shop, and I will leave a link in the video description below so you can check everything out there. And I really like how you can combine it with the coffee image and that little punny sentiment, because I am personally a big fan of coffee. So I have already pre-cut a mask of the Gopher and the coffee cup so I can stamp them together. For a little bit more versatility, the coffee cup is separate, so if you want the Gopher to appear like he's holding the coffee cup, some masking is certainly required. And I like to use the Ink-a-Dink-a-Doo stamping mask paper, as I find it really high quality and easy to reuse. When you're doing masking, you want to make sure that whatever you are wanting to appear most forward or in front of the whole scene is what you stamp first and then cover it with the mat. So of course I put the coffee cup down first so that it will appear in front of him, and then I have covered it with the mask, and now I'm going to stamp the Gopher, and I'm also going to cover the Gopher with the mask because I'm going to be creating a background behind it. Now this isn't a true one-layer card because a lot of times I do like to mount my panels on some black cardstock for an extra pop, as many of you are familiar. However, it does create that one-layer look because all of it is masked off as opposed to fussy cut out and layered. So it's kind of for what you personally prefer. So that sentiment that says "Go for a coffee" is perfect because I am going to be sending this to the Coffee Loving Paper Crafters card exchange, and that's a fun Facebook group which you can share all of your coffee creations in. And so I'm going to leave you a link to a couple of different Facebook groups that you might really enjoy, as I love to share my cards over on Facebook and see what others are creating. And so there's the Coffee Lovers group that Gerda sponsors, there is the Gerda Designs group, there is the Critter Loving Paper Crafters. All of these is great places to connect with the community and share your adorable stamps and creations. So I stamped that "Go for a Coffee" sentiment with some VersaFine Onyx Black ink so that it would be nice and dark. And then I did something that makes some people a little uncomfortable, and I cut my stamp. I cut the word "coffee" right off of the other stamps because I wanted to stamp the word "coffee" repeatedly. Now if you were just going to stamp it one time, I probably wouldn't cut my stamp. I would probably just mask it off. However, because I'm going to use it repeatedly, it's worth it to cut it, and you could always mount it back properly on the mat and still be able, or on the stamp block, and still be able to stamp it the original way just by lining everything up, and it's quite easy to do. So I have just the coffee sentiment now, and I am ready to do some stamping. Recently, I treated myself to the Hero Arts Neon Ombre inks. I use my ombre inks all the time. I really love them. I like being able to have a bunch of different options of colors in one ink pad, but then I also just like to stamp them in the traditional ombre way where like you get multiple colors on one stamping. And so I was really drawn to the ombre ones because they are super bright colors. It actually looks even more bright in real life than it does here on camera. And I've been trying to make sure to get some of the lighting a little bit brighter, a little more true colors here, and I think that that white grid mat is helping a little bit with that. But I also find that it's helping me to line up my sentiment. And so I do a lot of stamping of my own backgrounds, and this is very helpful. It also means that I can clean off my stamp right there on the side. So I will leave you a link to where you can find this grid paper at a great price on Amazon if that's something that you're interested in. Now I'm using two different Hero Arts ink pads. I am using the ombre that includes the orange to purple, and then I'm using the orange to yellow. And because they both end in an orange on one end, they actually do a nice ombre together. And so I'm able to continue from that dark orange of the one pad to the lighter orange of the other pad. And you might notice that I'm staggering the sentiment. So that way it doesn't look like straight perfect lines of coffee, but by staggering it, it's okay to make some little mistakes, or if things are a little bit crooked, you don't really notice because things aren't lined up perfectly. And I basically just make sure that when I stamp the next layer, I start in the middle of two words. So the middle of the word coffee will be in between the two coffees above it. And that generally gives me a pleasing staggered look. However, when I started right around the Gopher coffee sentiment, since that is the focal point, and I wanted to make sure that that would have plenty around it and lined up nicely. So I always recommend, if you have a particular focal point, start there and then build up and down from there. And once I have all of that, which actually dries relatively quickly, I like that about these inks. They're formulated the same way as a Hero Art Shadow ink. I am going to be able to pull off those masks and get started with a little bit of Copic coloring. I won't go into too much detail about that, but I did want to show you that I store my masks right there on my stamp set in case that's a helpful tip, so that way you don't lose them and you can reuse them. If you go through all the trouble of cutting out a mask, being able to get a couple of uses out of it is certainly a great thing. And I'm going to do some Copic coloring of the Gopher, as I mentioned, but I'm not going to show it all here. There are a couple other different Copic coloring videos on my channel, so if you're really interested in that, you can certainly check them out. I just really wanted to share these fun new inks in the stamp set with you today. So just a little tip on coloring that coffee cup, and I use the same thing with the Gopher because you want it to have a little bit of a rounded effect. You want the coffee cup to be round, his face to be round. Do add the shadows on the left and right side. That is the easiest way to get that rounded effect. If something is lighter in the middle, tends to come forward and then appear rounded. So I just use that as a simple tip to get quick blending. And I am actually even just using 2 quick colors on here because with Copic markers, the more times you add a layer, the darker the color gets. And so you can get quite a bit of blending even with just 2 shades. So you see there I used a similar technique and kept the center of the Gopher the lightest, and that gives him that rounded effect. And I mounted it on some black cardstock to really help that go for a coffee sentiment pop. And that is going to be it for my card today. If you like this tutorial, please give it a thumbs up. If you are interested in more crafty videos, you can hit the red subscribe button down below. You can also check in the video description for all those links I mentioned to the shop, to the Facebook groups to connect with, and all of the different social media where you can check out my projects. And thanks for watching. Bye.